An earthquake is an intense shaking of Earth's surface. This shaking is caused by movements in Earth's outermost layer, and earthquakes are the result of the sudden movement along faults within the Earth. The movement releases stored-up elastic strain energy in the form of seismic waves, which propagate through the Earth and cause the ground surface to shake.
Factors that can be affected by earthquakes. Physical factors. Ground rupture, when the movement breaks the Earth's surface. Landslides, caused by direct rupture and sustained shaking of unstable slopes. Tsunamis. Liquefaction, when sediment grains are made to float in groundwater, which causes the soil to lose all its solidity. Subsidence, soil recompacts after liquefaction. Fires, rupture of gas mains can contribute to ignition. Massive loss of life. Human factors, rupturing of pipelines, tunnels, aqueducts, railway lines, roads, airport runways, etc. Destruction of buildings, infrastructure damage, financial instability, distribution of diseases like acute respiratory infections, malaria, leptospirosis, measles, dengue fever, viral hepatitis, typhoid fever, meningitis, tetanus and cutaneous mucormycosis. Earthquakes through time. Past. Analyzing past earthquakes, we encountered the one Mexico suffered in 1985 that had a magnitude of 8.1. The main causes of death were multiple traumas, crushing and asphyxiation, which gave a total of more than 12,000 lost lives. The biggest mistake was that at the time of the earthquake, a great number of preventive measures were applied because of the lack of organization and lack of information in the population. Fortunately, since then, a lot of preventive measures have been taught in today's society. Present. The biggest earthquake in the last month took place in October 2nd and happened in the Vanuatu Islands, Oceania, with a magnitude of 7.2. The most earthquake-prone countries in the world are Japan, Nepal, and India. In 8th place, we can find Mexico. Surprisingly, climate change also affects the magnitude of earthquakes. It has been discovered that glaciers and permanent ice sheets in the polar regions exert enormous pressure on the bedrock, causing it to rub downward. As the ice melts and that weight is released from the Earth's crust, the land responds with a rebound, like a slow, giant version of a trampoline. Future. So far, earthquakes are impossible to predict, but one of the worst-case scenarios scientists have presented is the breaking of the San Andreas Fault. The USGS estimates a 7% chance that a magnitude 8 quake will occur within the next 30 years. With this magnitude, it might be possible that the entire San Andreas Fault were to rupture from the Mexico border up to northern California.
A tsunami is a series of extremely long waves caused by a large and sudden displacement of the ocean, usually the result of an earthquake below or near the ocean floor. This force creates waves that radiate outward in all directions away from their source, sometimes crossing entire ocean basins.
This is the disaster cycle and some recommendations in case a tsunami happens. Tsunami warning centers and coastal communities play a critical role in protecting the public. That's why the tsunami information centers exist. There are two types of tsunami warnings, the official and the natural, and preparedness, that is before the tsunami, the disaster while it's happening, and the response is after the tsunami. The reconstruction. The government develops recovery with medium and long-term plans where they rebuild the economy, infrastructure, etc. And the ultimate goal is to learn from disasters and minimize the impact so as not to repeat the same mistakes. Physical factors. Tsunami damage occurs when the ecosystem of different terrestrial animals disappears and cannot be habitable, and the animals die. Then the loss of coral reefs due to everything that is washed out to the sea after the disaster. Human factors are all the buildings or things that are destroyed and that the economy of that place stops because of the need to rebuild after all the damage that has occurred. Natural disaster through time. In the past, the earthquake in the Indian Ocean originated a tsunami that hit Thailand in December 2004, and the waves reached 10 meters in height. Japan helped with $500 million, and units of Indonesian, Australian, and US Army worked to try to help the survivors. Actions that helped a lot. The causes of death after the tsunami were infections in open wounds, trauma, among other untreated medical conditions. Recently, there have been tsunami warnings. For example, on March 2021, the emergency authorities of Chile, El Salvador, and Guatemala issued a tsunami warning from the Pacific coast after the earthquake that occurred near New Zealand. Japan can be considered as a risk zone since there is a confluence of 2-3 plates that move continuously, and it is also important to mention that climate change makes land more unstable and increases the risk of landslide caused tsunamis. In the future, California is located where tectonic plates meet, and the largest and most dangerous of these is the San Andreas Fault, and one of their computer models assumed that an earthquake will occur, initiating a rupture, and the calculation suggests that if that occurred in that section, about 2,000 people would die, triggering a tsunami that would come and go for 24 hours.